Welcome to the Book Flood Podcast, brought to you by goldenlibraries.com. I am your host, Tom Nixon. My guest this week is Molly Dettmann. Molly is a teacher librarian at Norman North High School in Norman, Oklahoma. She was named her school's Teacher of the Year and a district finalist for Teacher of the Year in 2021-2022 and the Oklahoma School Librarian of the Year in 2023. Welcome, Molly.
Hey, thank you so much for having me.
Oh, absolutely. A whole lot of awards there in a short period of time. And we'll talk about, you have one more award that we'll talk about just a little bit later. But why don't we start by you giving us a little idea of your career trajectory? How did you get to the seat you're in now?
Libraries have always been a part of my life. I was always a school library helper and library aide. And then I went to college for business instead and got a business degree, but really decided libraries were where I was meant to be. So I went to grad school and actually worked in the public library for 4 years before finally it got to a point where I just was really looking at the field of librarianship I was in and knowing that my favorite days were the days I did school outreaches and got to hang out with other school librarians. And so then I made the leap to school librarianship back in 2018, and it's been a dream ever since.
So I've been fortunate in my previous library career to work with a lot of the public library folks. Wonderful people, a different sort. I mean, we're both, it's a different kind of job, is it not?
Yeah, I was doing all sorts of like computer help, lots of sharing resources and things that it just was really difficult when you have someone, it's like, 8:30 at night because the library's open a little later and they need some sort of service or help, but everything's closed and like all you can give them is just like phone numbers and resources. So that got really hard at times. Whereas in a school, if a student needs help or resources, like I can give it to them right there and then and get them connected to those that help. So our public librarians, they do so much and they provide so much for the community, but some of those times could be really difficult. Whereas at a school, I feel a little bit more equipped to help our students out.
What are some of the challenges of being a high school teacher librarian these days? It's become a different job.
Oh, it has. Yeah. Every day is different here. I think probably one of the biggest difficulties is just getting people to understand what we do in our positions. So many teachers may be dependent on what schools they came from previously or what their school librarian experience was or was not. Growing up, I have so many that just don't know the scope of what all we can do in providing information literacy lessons, access to teaching and learning with cool technology in their students, lots of book support and love. And just trying to find the time to fit it all in. But so many teachers, they might come up and think like, oh, can we just do a traditional old school research paper? We just do one day in the library. And it's like, oh, let's see how we can change this up and make it a little more engaging and show even more of the resources that probably you had no idea were available back from your day.
Absolutely. When I started as a teacher librarian at a middle school, they didn't know what teacher librarians did. And I would do things that, trust me, were not anything special. I was in library school. I started that and got the job sort of on the same day. And they were amazed at what the job really is, because that's not what it had been in the past, at least at that school, which sometimes is a nice place to be.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Like my teachers I work with here are really lovely and supportive but I still feel like I am still teaching people what my position does and the value in it in terms of how it supports the whole school.
What year are you in now there?
So I'm in my 7th year right now.
And you're still teaching. That's the reality, isn't it?
Yeah, we get so many new teachers and just people who maybe we've never worked with before, but we find a way to kind of work it in and say like, hey, if you just bring your classes this one day, we're going to show you this cool lesson, this cool resource, and this cool book connection, and then they're hooked, and then they want to work with us all the time. But I'm at a school with about 2,400 students and like over
Oh,
130 faculty and staff. And on average, we've had the past couple of years and about 20 new teachers, whether they're brand new to the profession or just brand new to our school. So yeah, it's a lot of reteaching every year and just trying to just constantly promote myself and what the library offers.
Have you seen significant differences from year 1 to year 7? What has that transition been like for you?
I think, well, one, it's been a huge transition in terms of my second years when COVID happened. COVID completely changed how school librarianship was before I started to now. I feel like, I actually added like 30 extra years to my experience just living through that whole time period. But definitely, I found more confidence in my teaching abilities and just the knowledge I have and how I can pitch things to teachers and working with students. So I feel more confident and cool every single year than maybe my first year. I had the book stuff down because I learned I knew a red team literature, I knew about books and the library aspect of things, but the teaching part, it took a little bit longer to get more comfortable into my groove.
So I have been told by Amanda Jones, she of the That Librarian book that's out there and going like gangbusters, that I need to ask you about civic engagement. What's
Yes,
that like as a librarian?
it's so much fun. I think civic engagement's such an important thing, and but students need to be taught like what that looks like and how they can be engaged with their community. So many students I'll talk to and they'll just be like, they just think about like national elections and big national things, and it's like, no, y'all, local is where it's at. So I work with some of our government classes and teach lessons on like researching your local political candidates, how to get registered to vote, the importance of all that, and figuring out your own voice and your own political ideology. I'm doing
Hmm.
some lessons on that this week. And then for every year since I've been here, except for like 2020, 2021, we've hosted a voter registration drive and involved our student council and senior class and other student group leaders that help with that, along with our League of Women Voters volunteers. And so the voter registration is an annual thing. We do that twice a year. We just had, for National Voter Registration Day, we had our fall drive, and we had 67 students, faculty, staff either update their information or register to vote, which we were super proud and excited about, including one substitute teacher who came down to register because she had just become a citizen. And that was like
Oh,
such a
nice.
beautiful, wonderful moment to be a part of. So having the students be involved with that and see the importance of it and talk to their peers about voting, I think was a really cool experience in a way that's just a big uh, way to show civic engagement. But then the lessons definitely have been eye opening. Even talking to students, I mean, they don't understand exactly what primaries are or when elections happen or, what it even means to be a part of a particular political party. So many students would like not know what to check. And so I'd explain the differences and also explain that like, you can be a certain party, but then have certain beliefs about different issues or different
Hmm.
candidates. Like you're not beholden to vote Democrat or Republican just because you select that this at this particular time, which interestingly a lot of students didn't understand. And I mean, even some parts of just voting too. I had a conversation with the student the other day. I mean, I was just prepping for the voter drive at my desk, and he's like, "Oh, what are you doing?" So I explained, and he would go, and he was talking to me about how like, well, it's a good thing they stopped online voting, and I was like, "What?" And so he didn't even understand that like we've never just been able to like online vote for these big elections. Like you have to go in or early voting. Like I explained the differences. And I mean, students just don't know about things. They maybe hear things on social media or hear things here and there, but until they're ready to participate, they just don't know. And so that education up front, getting them prepared and ready and excited to be voting citizens, but then also understand how they can still help and be a part of things and have a voice before that is so, so important and something I'm really passionate about, obviously, because I just went on about it for probably like 5 minutes.
Oh, that's wonderful. A couple things. One is I seem to be noticing shift toward a lot more conversation about local elections than it seems like we've had in the past. I don't know if that's actually true, but it sure feels like it this year.
Mhm.
The other thing is that is so important that you're talking to your Oklahoma kids about that, because I think a lot of what you get on social media is a little more national. And I can assure you that the rules I live in California, the rules are different here. I bounce back and forth. Typically, I'm a declined estate, is what we call it here, which is I'm not any party. Except when we get to the presidential elections every year, I change myself to some party if I want to vote in the primaries, because here you can't. unless you were in one of the parties. But that can be very different state to state.
Yeah, that's actually how it is here too. We have closed primaries. So explaining that to students was, I think, really eye-opening for them, especially as they were, I think, trying to be strategic in where what they were filling out so that they would have the most voice and the most opportunities to vote.
So tell me about the American Association of School Librarians Frances Henne Award.
Yeah, so that was such an incredible opportunity. The Frances Henne Award is for a school librarian who has not attended ALA or ASL national conference and is within 5 years of being a school librarian. So I was on my 5th year and applied for that, and my director nominated me. And I was really fortunate to receive that award. You had to talk about your leadership and how you've already been involved with school library as a school librarian in your school, and also what you would get out of getting to go to a national conference and work with other school librarians. So I was at the time our chair of our Oklahoma School Librarians. I worked a lot with our school library division group and our state association. So I really pitched how this opportunity would let me talk and learn from more librarians and then come back to my state and share that. So when I got that award, I got some money to be able to attend the conference and hang out with all my besties, which was super. Most of them I'd only ever met online, like on the artist formerly known as Twitter and those social media professional learning networks. So that was really cool. And then when I got back to Oklahoma, I shared my notes from my sessions I went to. I did a session with another librarian who went from my state, and we did it called AASL After Party at our state conference to share kind of opportunities and how you can get money to go to conferences like that and like what you get out of them and how to be more involved nationally. So that was a really cool opportunity. So if you are within the first 5 years of your school librarian career and an
Mm.
ASL member, and you haven't been to a national conference, that's a really nice one to go for and get that opportunity to then kind of grow a little bit more in school librarianship nationally.
Sounds like a lot of fun. I'm a little past my first 5 years, so I don't think I'll be applying, but no, that is wonderful. I like that people get those kinds of opportunities, and the whole thing about being able to meet up with your besties. I know so many people in library world that I see once every couple of years. Good friends, I would say, but again, you just don't see them in that same way very often.
And just in person is just so it's more personable, which sounds silly, but it really, you can text, chat, all that all day, every day. But until you get to be together, it kind of adds an extra more to your cup after when you get to go back to school.
Do you get the opportunity to go to AASL and or ALA very often?
So, because I was chair of our school library division, I did get to go. I got some money to go to ALA for the first time last summer. This summer 2024 in San Diego, which was really awesome, and go to some meetings and go to some sessions and stuff there. But that was my first ALA, and then that fall that October was my first ASL. So I will continue to look for funding opportunities and saving up so that I can still go to and be a part of those. But it is something that I would have to work on myself. It's not, we get to go to our state conference in my district, but I mean, money's tight and time's tight. And so it's kind of up to us to go and be a part of these opportunities.
Absolutely. At one point, I had a supervisor who was very willing to send me to conferences. She said, "You need to take people with you." And I went, "You're willing to fund that?" And it was a go. So some of the ones that I took were folks that that it's really hard to take. Library media technicians are what they call them here. It's a classified position. Took them 1 year, and then every year after that, they're working as hard as they can to come up with the funds to pay for their own selves. Typically, that's for our CSLA, California School Library Association, which is we're a larger state, so it's a larger kind of thing. And as far as San Diego, it's a city we save just for folks to come visit. You know that, don't you?
Oh, it was so beautiful. The weather was so lovely, and we even went to the zoo at one point and got to do some other fun things. So I would totally go back to San Diego tomorrow if someone paid for it.
It was my wife and I had long said that we would love to move there, except it's as expensive as it looks, right?
I
Yeah.
can only imagine. Yeah, just even paying for water at one point, I was like, "What?" But then I got to go back to Oklahoma, and water was not expensive.
Who are the authors that you always buy and read for yourself or for the library, however you want to go with that?
So, murder mysteries and sports books are really popular in my library. Some authors that we always buy the new one because students really love are like Neil Schusterman, Holly Jackson, Holly Black,
Hmm.
um, Kira Cass. Like some of the ones, it's interesting. Some of the series, like Hunger Games, is still really popular. Twilight's really popular. So we also have to sometimes just rebuy books in those series so that students who are now discovering it as they've moved up to high school can read them. Um, but yeah, I mean, anything that's a murder mystery that looks good and is well reviewed for our collection development policy, we snatch up. Sports. We like to get some of those like little shorter rapid read titles because we have so many students that I feel like since I first started reading, I feel like students really do like to read. I mean, it definitely drops off in middle school, and then high school is a little harder to find the time. But then I have students who want to get back into it, and their reading stamina just is not what it probably used to be back in the day. So those shorter reads are really helpful to kind of get them back in the swing of things. And fantasy is still really popular too. So all the big fantasy authors and just, I mean, all sorts of things. Oh, manga and graphic novels, hugely popular. So manga series, we take recommendations for those all the time. And I mean, so we just buy all sorts of books. I guess that's not a really good answer other than just like we really immerse ourselves in what's popular, what fits well with our collection, what's missing, volume 3. And just we have like a running book cart so that, as soon as we get our book money, we can snatch up all those titles so we can get them on the shelf faster to our students.
Do you have kind of the same budget year to year?
We are really fortunate that they write into our bonds that get approved. So we just had a bond that passed last year, and they write into that books and material money. So we get kind of a static amount from that each year so that we can still for sure buy books and things in our database subscriptions. So it's probably gone up or down depending on our student count by 1,000 or two, but it's been pretty steady for the amount of students we have.
I was also in a district that actually had library budgets for all of our libraries, but in this state, there are many places that do not. I always considered ourselves lucky in that regard.
Yeah, I mean, that's why they write it into bonds, which are, and then, whenever we're talking about like passing bonds and doing that, I'm always like, do it for the library books and everything else it wants to, but also the library books because, I mean, books have just gotten more expensive. I always am on like some sort of reading committee, like with YALSA or our state association, so that I get free books through that as well to help put those back into my collection. So I do anything and everything to get books in the library.
Well, you have to. That was the first thing I learned sort of in my first year. You have to be your best advocate because often there isn't someone out there that will be that necessarily. So, what's a book or series of books from your childhood that still resonate with you?
So I was absolutely in love with the book My Teacher is an Alien by Bruce Coville. And I like wore that book out. It was like I think I read it like in fourth grade, and then it just became my yearly read throughout elementary school. And when I first got into librarianship about 2014, I went to it was called the YALSA's Literature Symposium, and it was in Texas. And I knew Bruce Coville was going to be there. So I brought my book because weirdly, my mom had the illustrator had it signed. So I thought all this whole time Bruce Coville signed it, but it was just the illustrator who was also amazing and wonderful. But I wanted him to sign it. So I had it in my little bag. And then I get on the elevator and he was there. And I was like, Bruce Coville. And he goes, yes, that's me. So that's been my favorite series as a child. I also love the scary stories to tell in the dark. Those were really good.
Oh, yeah.
All those like scary things. I love horror movies and scary stuff now, but I also loved reading it and as a child. So I was a scary, spooky kid growing up, and those always resonated with me because I just liked them. They were just really interesting, and I just like the safety of the horror in a book or a movie versus the horrors of real life sometimes.
Oh, so nice. It's good to have those kind of memories. What are you reading now?
Ooh, so I just finished Spy Family Volume 12. Family is a manga series where they are like a little family of a spy, an assassin, and a little girl who's telekinetic. And then there's also like a spy dog that gets in like Volume 4. And it's such a fun, action packed series. So I just got the 12th one and read it this weekend. But now I have to wait for the next volume, so I'm kind of bummed about that. But it's such a fun little manga series, and the anime is really good too and cute.
Do the students know you read manga?
Yes, we actually, both my co-librarian and I, we have next to our desks because our desks are out in the library, and we have like big pillars next to them. So we take pictures. We draw our print out pictures of what we're reading and what we finished reading. So that's promoted on our little pillars. So mine is usually full of about half of it's manga, and the kids are always surprised that I read it. But I mean, I read it as a kid too. Like it's just a fun format and lots of fun stories. So I've definitely connected with students who have either watched the anime or reading the manga themselves. And so it kind of makes me cool, which it should, because manga is really cool. But yeah, we
Absolutely.
see it on there and they'll talk to me about it. Or if they're at the graphic novels and manga and I'm over there, I'll talk to them about it because I've read a series or two, and sometimes they look for recommendations themselves.
I got into manga and graphic novels when I worked at a middle school. And the thing about middle school students, I would have a big display of these books. There would be kids, they'd come in at recess, they'd come in at lunch, they would stand there and read these. Getting them to check one out was a little challenging, or a lot challenging. So sometimes I'd come by with my bar scanners, excuse me.
That just happened to me on Friday. This kid came in and he was reading it was like One Piece, and he grabbed it and I said, "Oh, are you going to check it out?" He's like, "Oh, I'm going to read it here." And I said, "But can you check it out real quick, because that helps show that the books are being used, and then that can help us buy more books in the future." And he ran, so I've never seen a kid run so fast to that self checkout. He was so excited to be a part of that because he wants more books too. So I pitched it that way. And we have self checkout. So it took him like 2 seconds to do it. And then, then he could put it in the return slot on his way out. So I
Very
totally
cool.
get it. I do the same exact thing. I'm like, please at least check it out, even if it's in house.
Well, thank you very much, Molly, for coming on the Book Flood podcast. I'll have information about you in the show notes for folks who would like to learn a little more. Also, I would appreciate a like, a follow, a share for those who are listening on Spotify or Apple or elsewhere. And again, thanks, Molly.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight.
Absolutely.